Alright, so hello everybody, my name is Chris Alvazuras. I will be presenting a little bit of information about the Edo period. So a fun fact about the Edo period is the Edo period is more commonly known as the Tokugawa period, depending on who you ask. The Tokugawa period itself lasted between the years 1603 to 1867. The Tokugawa period itself was a marking point in history because that's where it's the last few years where traditional Japanese government started to change, along with the class and structure within society. A key thing to understand when it comes to the Edo period or the Tokugawa period is that there was like the rise of shoguns and emperors at the same time. And you have to understand that there's a difference between these two. Both were two major powers, kind of like what the emperor was, as we all should be familiar with. But there's a lot of differences between the two, as the shogun had a lot of different powers over the emperor, or vice versa. So the Edo period itself also marks as the unification point in Japan, where Japan has like now a national government, like a more centralized government. Another keynote thing to take into consideration is that because of the large rise in working class within Japanese society, there's a lot of things that come from it. A lot of drama and literature rise from this. Most notably is probably like the type of art there is, and one really notable thing that comes from this time period is like the type of theater, like such notably as the kabuki theater. Another, like the art and literature that takes place in the Edo period also derives from a lot of influence from like religion and stuff. So one major religion that has a great influence upon Japanese literature, art, and stuff is probably Buddhism, and I'll go on later in the video to describe how Buddhism takes effect into the culture, but also what other types of Buddhism and a little bit about it. Alright, so the next part of my video that I want to talk about is the societal aspect of things, which is known as more commonly as the Genroku culture of things. And so there's a lot of things that happen during this time period, but I want to talk about the most important things at this point. And so to talk about it, first we need to like really look at the big things that stand out, and you have to understand what's going on with the people at this time. So a couple things that are going on is that there's a lot of urban growth during this time period. The vital merchant class itself is like on the rise, and the economy as well is extremely doing well. During this time period too, there's the literature and art and drama of things is kind of taking like a cool turn of things and having a nice influence. And so kabuki theater comes out in this time period, and if you don't know what that is, we looked at it in class, but a couple other things come out at this time, like famous dramaticist, I think that's the word, dramatist, Chikakatsu is a renowned puppeteer, and he actually, if you don't remember, he creates life and drama and art and theater through puppeteering, and he gives this sort of like lifelike to these puppets, which is not really easy to do. But what's really cool about like the art and literature of these things is that there's like a consistent theme at this time during the Genroku culture in the Edo period, and that's the love-suicide theme. And if you might be asking yourself, well, what is the love-suicide theme? The love-suicide theme is basically a lover's kind of like, it's a theme about lovers usually, and it always ends like somehow in a double suicide. Basically the whole point is for that lovers to kind of like some way somehow kind of end up killing themselves to kind of just like meet each other in some type of afterlife according to like some type of Buddhist religion. And so that's in terms of they're just trying to get to like that ultimate happiness. It's called Amida's Paradise, I believe. A couple other things that come into like the whole love suicide theme is the whole idea of Giri versus Jinjo. I think that's what it's called. And so Giri versus Jinjo is basically the idea of self versus societal service. So it's kind of like if you feel what you feel like doing, like your own individual emotions, your desires, your goals are contrary to what society wants, what society requires of you. It's kind of like that internal struggle. And it's kind of cool. I think it's a really cool aspect of things during this time period because there's a lot of change during this period. But anyways, I was saying how lots of this art and theater and literature takes a lot of influence from, Buddhist religion. So as I mentioned previously and earlier in the video, is that Buddhism was really involved when it comes to influencing other types of literature, art, drama, theater, whatever, in the Edo period or the Tokugawa period of Japan. So you have to understand that when it comes to Buddhism, there's actually more than one type of Buddhism. It's actually a little bit different than your so-called perceived idea of what modern Buddhism is, or your general idea perceived of Buddhism is. So you have to understand that there's this idea of Judo-secular or sect Buddhism, and it's kind of like following the ideology of the Pure Land. So how this is done and how their belief is, done is that they believe that Buddha is the everlasting light, and that you have to follow this sacred formula that is known as Nam Ada Butsu. Okay, so then pretty much that is, in a nutshell, it is basically the calling of Buddha, who is full of infinite compassion and love. It's the idea that this sacred formula is the path to like salvation, and through salvation they hope to succeed in that Buddha would kind of rebirth the whole western side of the world and make it a pure land once again. As stated earlier, within the Genroku culture and like the love suicide theme, and how the idea of like the afterlife is to reach that Amida's paradise. It's your ultimate goal when it comes to this idea of Buddhism. Alright, so those are the main ideas of when it comes to the Edo period. If you have any ideas or any type of comments or any ideas of how like any ideas I missed, or any kind of just general thoughts in general that you want to just mention, I'd really appreciate it. Just let me know. Other than that, that's really what the Edo period is all about. Thank you.